Welcome back to Kids Live. Today we're talking about decision making in families with our resident guest, Michael Grose. Thank you for joining us yet again.
Great to be here.
Now, kids do tire of their parents making decisions for them eventually, don't they?
Yes, I think they should. I really think they should. The whole notion of raising kids is actually about making yourself redundant. And that's in all sorts of ways. And I guess ultimately as parents, we actually want our kids to be making decisions for themselves. And I guess that's a state we call adulthood.
Yep.
So, along the way, we've actually got to be giving kids opportunities to make decisions for themselves.
Yep.
I see the whole notion of decision making in families around three different areas. There are decisions which are parents to make. There are decisions which are, I guess, family decisions where we can sit down and have a bit of a yak because it impacts on all of us. And there are areas where kids should be able to make some decisions for themselves, even from a fairly early age. So I often see that motion of decision making as which area we're operating in. And as kids get older, it's less and less about parents making decisions and more about kids making decisions for themselves. Having said that, I think actually families operate very well as benign dictatorships or guided democracies.
Of course.
Sometimes we as families can think that we'll give kids lots of opportunities to make decisions and you decide. And kids aren't really all that comfortable with that. So we need to feel comfortable with the fact that we're family leaders, that we are not so much a boss in a controlling sense, but we're managing this whole group, this tribe, and we're the ones who are in charge, but we'll use a management approach which brings kids in and gives them opportunities to make decisions.
Yep.
And we've actually got to take in the age and stages of kids' development as well. So some children are a little bit too young to make certain decisions, so we've got to sort of counter that in. But I mentioned before about the three areas, and an area where children, even from a fairly early age, might make a few choices for themselves, maybe simply in what they're going to wear, on the food that they eat, how they spend their pocket money, the little areas which involve them. The areas where mum and dad need to be fairly firm and fairly confident enough to make decisions are, I guess, in the areas of schooling, in the areas of you need to turn up to family meal times, and all those sort of areas which pretty much fit into an adult notion. The notion of going out, the notion of you being safe, etc. And there's an area which I call family decision making, where maybe everyone has a bit of input, maybe over simple stuff such as family routines, for example, or we're having a bit of a trouble with the mess in the bathroom. What can we do about that? So you bring kids' input on board.
Definitely. And when kids are making decisions for themselves, or when they should be making decisions for themselves, when do parents, or what signs do they look for in their children when they should start backing off?
Yeah, really good point. One of them is often kids will let you know when they're ready because they'll actually ask you.
Okay.
They'll
be adult about it.
They'll let you know that I want to have a bit of a say in this. Sometimes it can be their misbehaviour. They can actually rebel to a degree. And that's a bit of a sign that they're ready to make a decision themselves. And sometimes it's just intuition. Sometimes it's looking ahead and saying, look, in some ways he's old enough to decide himself. An example of that was, and I don't know when this magically happened, but I know with bedtime in my own sort of household that when my kids were very young, below 5 or in early childhood, early primary schools, pretty much that was our decision to make when bedtime was. And then as they got a bit older, we sort of negotiate and started to talk about it, and we reached some little decisions that maybe you can stay up later on the weekends because of a certain show. So there was a bit of toing and froing.
Yep.
And even in early adolescence as well, we were pretty insistent that no, it's a little bit late to go to bed. You need to go to bed a bit earlier than what you think you are. So still some toing and froing. And suddenly at some stage, I cannot remember when this was, that we stopped actually saying it's time for bed. And I think that was around about when we got to the end of secondary school, when they started to really take responsibility for their own behaviour. They were fairly self-motivated school-wise. And so we actually stopped making decisions for them. We might have made suggestions, but in some ways I find the whole notion of decision making a little bit like having a rubber band around your wrist. As you grow, as you grow, the rubber band breaks. and suddenly it's not there anymore.
Yep.
And so that's how I see the notion of making decisions. I guess there's another aspect as well, is if we allow kids to make a decision for themselves about maybe what they're wearing or about their own life, we need to be able to allow them to experience the consequence of a poor choice, because sometimes kids will choose poorly. And if they do make a poor choice, then we need to not rescue them, as sometimes we do, so that they learn, well, that wasn't a great idea. Next time I actually won't make the same decision, I'll decide in a different way. So decision making also involves the kids experiencing the outcomes of their poor choice and not rescuing them.
Do you think that's hard for parents to step back and watch their kids make mistakes and learn from them?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard. I find that boys more than girls are what I call heuristic learners, who need to learn from the experience, and sometimes they need to find out for themselves. And a heuristic learner is someone who actually, mum might say, don't pat that dog, don't go near that dog, it's going to bark, it might be a bit dangerous. And a heuristic learner says, well, I hear you, mum, but I'm going to find out for myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to allow kids to make some poor choices and to experience not so much the dog bite, but something which is, it might be they spend all their pocket money in the first day and they've got to wait 6 days, and we've advised them, and we said, look, plan your spending. No, but I want to buy this. And we let them say, okay, buy that. And then we've got to let them perhaps experience the fact that I've got to wait another 6 days till I get my next lot of pocket money, or I've got to borrow it from somewhere else. Yeah. Don't go and rescue them and dip in and give them another lot, because on the one hand you're saying, here, make a decision. On the other hand, you're saying, well, I'll rescue if you make a bad one.
Yeah.
So I guess that's common sense, and most parents are aware of that. But the whole notion of making decisions is we need to get the kids to practice making decisions, and sometimes the choices are going to be poor. So we as parents then actually need to be fairly supportive and in many ways join the dots together and let them know that bad choice, and this is what happened. So next time maybe you choose differently.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
That's a pleasure.